Greetings, everybody. Great Gleekon here again with another episode of Lore of Warcraft. Stay a while and listen to this one. We jumped forward. I think we left off at 600 years before the Dark Portal, and that was when Egwene was piecing out because of the Tourist Guard hunting her down, and because of a little bit of inner taint from Sargeras. So we've now jumped up to 230 years before the Dark Portal. This is called the War of the Three Hammers. I believe this is having to do with the dwarves, and I think there's an in-game book that talks about this. There are some. If you ever get there, there's a achievement. It's quite an achievement to get. It's one of the exploration ones in the general exploration tab. But it has tons of lore books that you can read, and a lot of this stuff just comes right from the in-game lore books. So that's possibly something. I've done the achievement on my main, and it's time-consuming. It depends. Maybe one day we'll do that, or we'll at least look them up, because you can just easily find them online. Okay, so let's go over this War of the Three Hammers. Far from the hidden Guardian Sanctum, High King Modimus Anvilmar and his dwarves thrived in their mountain home of Ironforge. Not sure if they're talking about the Guardian Sanctum where Egwene hid at, or near Dalaran. Over the centuries, trade partnerships with the human city-states had filled Ironforge's coffers with riches. Great architectural feats, such as the stone-wrought dam, attracted curious visitors from as far away as the Elven Kingdom of Quel'Tha Lost. I think the dam is where the Thandal Span is. Yet beneath the facade of prosperity, tension simmered between Ironforge's three powerful clans: the Bronzebeards, the Wildhammers, and the Dark Irons. So the Bronzebeards are the ones I would say that are like the most common. They're the ones that currently inhabit Ironforge. I think a lot of them are the Explorers League. They're the ones that you are going to be most familiar with. The Wildhammers are the Griffin Riders. They're the ones that I believe in Warcraft 2 you team up with. They're also in the Twilight Highlands. There's a lot of quests with them. And the Dark Irons are now an unlockable race, but they are the quote-unquote more evil of the different races, but there are good ones within. Thane Matarin Bronzebeard was the head of the Bronzebeard clan, the largest of the three factions. The clan, which formed the bulk of Ironforge's military and mercantile classes, considered itself the backbone of the kingdom and claimed to share distant blood relations with High King Modimus. And I wasn't... Now, I have heard of Anvilmar, but High King Modimus... The Wildhammers lived among the craggy hills and icy slopes of Ironforge. Led by Thane Cardos Wildhammer, they gained notoriety as adept and incredibly resilient mountaineers. Considered uncouth by the Bronzebeard clan, the Wildhammers struggled to gain more sway with High King Modimus and to solidify their place among the ruling elite of Ironforge. And yet they are essential to the kingdom's prosperity, because they are the bad A's that roam the area and keep them safe. Sorcerer Thane Thaurissan ruled the Dark Irons, who inhabited the deepest and darkest corners of the subterranean city. Their long-standing practice of dabbling in sorcery, along with a penchant for secrecy and political scheming, drew the ire of Ironforge's other inhabitants. Plus, we've already established magic is in general looked upon with some skepticism from all of the races. But that's their big reason why arcane and warlocks, dwarves can be those classes. When in Dungeons and Dragons, especially the old classic dwarves, have this anti-magic kind of aspect to themselves. I think Thaurissan is still around, or at least was in times of World of Warcraft Classic, and he's a person that you fight, I think. Thaurissan held firm control over the kingdom's richest gem and mineral deposits, using his wealth as leverage to protect his people and secure a place in Ironforge's increasingly volatile political arena. High King Modimus strived to treat each clan with fairness and respect, but his inability to ease tensions between the factions ultimately led to disaster. The High King passed away from old age, and before his eldest son could be crowned, the simmering cauldron of Ironforge boiled over. This actually kind of reminds me a lot of, if you've ever played the original Dragon Age Origins, there's a lot of cool story in those games. I feel like it got away from it a little bit when they did the Dragon Age Awakenings. But there was a lot of really cool things to like about in that Origins game. No one knows exactly who struck the first blow. War ignited between the three clans as each vied for dominion of the mountain. Bloody battles raged in every corner of the kingdom for many long and terrible years. In the end, the Bronzebeard clan used its martial expertise to drive the Wildhammers and Dark Irons from the mountain and claim total victory, which is why they run it now. Cardros conceded defeat and led his clan north. The Wildhammers eventually settled in a nearby region of marshlands, so probably the wetlands are also run by them, maybe. But those are a lot of Explorers League too. They carved out a great subterranean city named Grim Batal, one that soon rivaled even Ironforge in scope and prestige. And Grim Batal is a dungeon that you actually do in the Cataclysm expansion that's in the Twilight Highlands. The Wildhammers also, if you go up into the hinterlands, they have a base as well, where you can, like a quest hub. The earlier defeat weighed heavy on Cardros' shoulders, but in time he and his kin accepted their lot and prospered in their new home. The Dark Irons ventured south to the tranquil Red Ridge Mountains. There they founded the new kingdom of Thaurissan, named after their leader. Although his people prospered, Thaurissan himself wallowed in humiliation. He dreamed of one day exacting retribution upon his cousins in the north and claiming all of Cosmodon as his own. After years of secretly forging a new army, Thaurissan launched a brazen two-pronged assault against the Bronzebeard and Wildhammer clans. The Sorcerer Thane himself led the attack on Ironforge. I like that he's a Sorcerer Thane. And I guess he's not, even though the Bronzebeards won, he's not just mad at them. He wants to beat both clans. He had bolstered his formidable Dark Iron warriors with legions of immense war golems and siege engines. The invaders reached the very heart of the city before the Bronzebeard finally rallied and pushed the Dark Irons all the way back to Red Ridge. See, I didn't remember Red Ridge. Red Ridge Mountains has now nothing to do with dwarves. It's a Rambo zone, and it's a human zone. So I did not realize the Dark Irons. Maybe in Classic, I didn't. But I guess if you push past Red Ridge, you start to get into the Searing Lands and the Blasted Badlands and stuff like that, and that's Dark Iron territory. Thaurissan's wife, the sorceress Modgud, led the second army against Grim Batal. The Dark Irons besieged the mighty fortress and called upon their dark magics to break the Wildhammer's will. They brought the shadows of Grim Batal to life, transforming the bustling city into a realm of nightmare and terror. Cardros led his Wildhammers in a daring counterattack and vanquished Modgud. With her death, the Dark Irons retreated south, only to find themselves face to face with the armies of Ironforge. Mataron had caught wind of the attack and brought his forces north. The Bronzebeard and Wildhammer armies crushed the Dark Irons from both sides, utterly annihilating them. But I wonder if Grim Batal is like this evil place. Actually, I think it's like full of dragons in Cataclysm. But a lot of things are with Deathwing. In the Dark Irons, Mataron and Cardros found a common enemy and a new purpose. They put aside their old rivalries and marched their mighty host southward, pledging they would not stop until they had purged Thaurissan and his treacherous Dark Irons from the face of the world. Yeah, genocide. It's always a good way to go. As the Bronzebeard and Wildhammer armies drew near, Thaurissan scrambled for a way to defeat his enemies. He decided to draw the fiery power from deep within the world and use it as a weapon. Thus Thaurissan wove a great spell to save his kingdom. Yet amid his conjuration, his mind turned to the death of his wife and his recent defeats. Oh, I didn't realize she was killed. I guess it said utterly annihilating. I guess that's implied. And his recent defeats. Anger roiled through Thaurissan's heart. His rage grew so absolute that his spell work breached the elemental plane and tapped into Ragnaros the Fire Lord, who in Classic, he is like the original raid boss coming and fighting Ragnaros. Also, if you've ever played the World of Warcraft board game, probably one of my favorite board games of all time. You can't buy it anymore. It's out of print, but you could probably, for some ungodly amount of money, probably like at least $1,000, you could get it. There's a couple expansions. There's a Burning Crusade expansion and another like mini expansion that was more based on some of these other raids. They recently came out with the Wrath of the Lich King, but it's not an expansion to that game. It's a remaking of the Pandemic game, which is a decent game, but nothing like the Warcraft board game. I wish somebody would do like a Gloomhaven style, also a cool game, Gloomhaven style, like Kickstarter to get more going, because that game was just dope, or even just reboot the whole thing. But Ragnaros is one of like the original bosses that you can fight in that game. Unwittingly, Thaurissan ripped Ragnaros from the elemental plane and summoned him to the surface of Azeroth. The earth buckled and wrenched apart. The Fire Lord's violent rebirth sparked a series of apocalyptic explosions that instantly killed the sorcerer Thane and shattered the surrounding mountains. From afar, Mataran and Kardros watched in horror as the world was torn asunder and firestorms engulfed the area. They knew in that instant that Thaurissan had doomed himself and his people. Frightened for their own safety, the Wildhammers and Bronzebeards turned north and fled. And that's probably why we also have the Searing Gorge, or whatever it's called. And the Badlands nearby, like those areas, that's why they are so dark and messed up. And that's because they're the heart of the fire elementals. And Ragnaros is pretty evil, pretty wild dude. I mean, I guess he's technically neutral, but like a chaotic neutral for sure. And here is Ragnaros, the OG raid boss. This is Thaurissan summoning Ragnaros, the Fire Lord, into the world. There's baby Thaurissan right there. And maybe that's why I recognize the name, because the realms still exist, or maybe there's some way that you can still fight Thaurissan. I'm not sure. But these original dungeons in that, and some of these original raids, the Blackrock Mountain, pretty sure Ragnaros is involved in some of that. All right, guys. Cool. So we got that whole region of the world mapped out. We're really, if you start thinking about it, there's very few spots left that we haven't covered. Ungoro Crater we haven't talked about. A couple other little things that really don't happen. They might not even exist before Warcraft, World of Warcraft, like the Plaguelands, the Eastern and Western Plaguelands. They are not the Plaguelands until far in the future, after the First Great War. So we have, as far as the way things kick off at Orcs and Humans, we've just about set everything up. Okay, another episode in the pipes, 5x5. Thank you so much for listening, guys, and I will see you on the next episode of Lore of Warcraft.